Hi again. This video is a video that focuses on how to write quantitative research questions. So as you can see, I'm just going to talk about some of the key concepts here, draft some ideas about research questions, discuss some of their components and how they might differ a little bit from qualitative research, but my focus will be on what are the best ways to approach quantitative research questions. So one big thing that I see often that is a mistake that folks make when they're writing research questions. So a mistake is writing research questions that can be answered with yes or no. So an example might be, does socioeconomic status affect high school graduation rates? Possible answer could be yes or no. This is not a great research question because it doesn't allow for the kind of variability that we would want to see in quantitative research questions. A lot about quantitative research questions is understanding the broader scope of the variety of variables that could affect an outcome. Quantitative research certainly doesn't go as deep in terms of how deeply or nuanced or detailed it can measure a specific variable. It is ultimately distilling everything down to a number, but the strength of it goes very wide. And so a lot of what you can see in quantitative research, what distinguishes it, what makes it really helpful and useful to us, is that it can pack a variety of things into one statistical model to see which of the variables is contributing the largest to the outcome that we're looking at. So for example, if I wanted to look at socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, gender, um, previous year's grades in English, maybe father and mother's employment status, a number of different things that could um, lead to differences and variations in high school graduation rates. I can put all of those variables, if I measure them in a quantitative way, into a statistical model that will tell me which one of those has the biggest impact toward high school graduation rate. The largest effect size is the sophisticated way that we talk about that, or maybe the vernacular, the jargon. And so you can see that this is something that is a lot more nuanced than just a yes or no response. So we want to give a much bigger, broader surface for that to play out on. So the possible fix is, to what extent does socioeconomic status affect high school graduation rates? So giving to what extent allows us to have a much broader analysis and a lot more nuance in how we respond to that question. Now, if I'm going to continue to be a little bit nitpicky, effect is causal language, cause and effect. And one of the biggest things about quantitative research is that correlation does not equal causation. Just because two things are related doesn't mean that one causes the other by any means. So if I had to revise this research question further, I might say use slightly different words. I'll say improvement here. To what extent does socioeconomic status predict high school graduation rates? Or, to what extent does socioeconomic status predict the likelihood of graduating from high school. It's more specific. This idea of prediction is specifically related to regression outside the scope of this class, but it is something that you do need to look for in terms of how quantitative research questions are posed. The words in them specifically relate to the kind of statistical analysis that you're doing. Predict is specific to regression. The term predict means they're using a regression model of some kind. Other words could be correlate, difference. These are things that you might see. For example, to what extent is there a difference in math scores between high SES schools and low SES schools? This is going to be a different approach. We're not using regression. The difference word probably gives me, in this case, maybe an independent samples t-test. Again, some of this is inferential statistics language, so you can ignore that. That's part of something that's beyond this course. But the key thing that I want to get across here is that the language in well-written quantitative research questions should define the key variables used and refer to the kind of statistical analysis being conducted. If I'm looking here in this question, to what extent is there a difference in math scores between high SES schools and low SES schools? One, math scores. You can see math scores is my dependent variable, my outcome variable in here. High SES and low SES schools, this is an SES variable. So if I were to break this down, I've got two variables in this research question. The dependent variable is math scores, and the independent variable is SES. The term difference suggests I'm using a test to compare differences between these two groups, which I know to be independent samples t-test. There are some other options too, but that one is going to be the best one for this research question. Again, the technique, the specifics about what statistical tests to choose is well beyond the scope of this course. But most statistics classes will talk about those things, and so you especially need to see this connection when you're reading quantitative research, looking for these quantitative research question principles that are really key to understanding how to write a quantitative research question. You know, these are both examples of inferential statistics. You can use descriptive comparisons too. Like this difference question also could be approached in a descriptive manner, just describing the difference between those two scores, like the average. You might also say, to what extent does the average math score vary among the third grade class? That would be an example of a descriptive question. So everything about research questions should really be leading into what kind of statistical analysis you're conducting in your research, and that should be evident in well-written quantitative research questions. And just so you know, you might see published research that doesn't always follow these principles. Just because something's published doesn't always mean that it's good. And so it's important to remember that look for these key principles, these key ideas, and make sure to integrate them into your practice as much as possible, even if you see some variety of like lower quality research questions, even in published research. Okay, hope this was helpful in understanding a little bit more about quantitative research questions.